All right. Hopefully you can hear me now. Okay, Marthal says if he hears anything, he'll say something. I can hear me. Cool. Right on. All right, so I am pretty much just going to go with the live chat on this. I have zero agenda at all. So feel free to ask questions, start general conversation. If there's a website you want me to check out to see different products, let me know. Uh, there's, like I said, no agenda. Just wanted to try out the software, see how the live streaming would work. Yeah. So I live in Michigan. It's starting to get cold. Can definitely see the sun moving south, which makes me very sad. A lot shorter days and everything. So yeah, battery hookup page. Yep. You guys have any new projects going on? The bike actually is running great. Um, it's I think getting close to I think six or 700 miles on it now, and I was riding it to work quite a bit, but it started getting chilly, and I just don't have the heart to do it. It's only like three miles to work, but man, you want to get there in a hurry and riding 25, 30 miles an hour. It's it's brutal. So not a great way to start the day, but it'll wake you up. Florida, lucky. Plenty of sun there, huh? We hold your robins hostage down here. Hey, there's a few that stick around up here. I see them in the winter. He says, Off-Grid Wannabe says, uploading now, new shed. Nice. That's pretty cool. Are you doing an expansion or just starting fresh? Because I know you had quite a few 1, 2, 3 cells, right? No luck, moved here from Indiana. Well, so you're used to the Midwest winters then. Yeah, they're something. I live in southeast Michigan. I know up in northern Michigan on the west side of the state, they get a lot of lake effect snow coming off of Lake Michigan, and they measure their snow in feet. I mean, a foot of snowfall overnight is no big deal for them, so it's pretty crazy. Went off grid about 4 months ago, so your whole house off grid, because that would be pretty cool. Um, I actually uh, had a Generac generator in my house when I moved in. The generator was taken from the previous owner, but they left the transfer switch, and I figured out that I could backfeed the house with a split phase inverter. I haven't done any videos on that yet, but that should I should do a video on that. It's kind of cool. So it's nice knowing you have that backup power. Tesla Model S battery and Chevy Bolt. Is it just a single Model S battery, or do you have several? Use mini split. Used to work at the Howe military base. 22 kilowatt hours is pretty good. You have solar on that also, I'm assuming. I don't know if any of you guys ever check these out. It's kind of cool. 3 Chevy Bolts, one Tesla model. Marthal says 5,000 watts of solar. In Florida, I'm sure that probably leaves you with plenty of power to spare. They get fully charged every day, I'm assuming. Generator backup. Toby says, I'm doing up a shed from a wreck. I've just got 2 panels up on the roof yesterday. Nice. Are they facing south? Uh, or do you gotta just kind of deal with what you can get out of it? Marthal says, yes, they do easy. Yeah, I bet. 4 hours of sunlight and your battery's full. Oh, I'm jealous. On the upside, my neighbor to the south has a giant tree that overhangs about half of my yard. And today he was talking about cutting it down in the spring, which I had to fight back a smile, but I was very happy for that because it's a struggle. I get 4 or 5 kilowatt hours on a cloudy day right now and like 6 or 7 on a sunny day. So yeah, once that sun starts moving south, it's definitely rough. I struggle quite a bit. I'm basically able to keep the inverter running 24/7 and run my deep freezer and a TV. That's really all I can manage. That inverter's brutal. 50 watts constant. So looking for more storage options, Marthal says. You know what? Hold on a second. Can I do this? Guys, I don't even know how to bring up a live stream. I'm a noob. Well, that's not going to work. So you guys probably see me. Does this look stupid? I brought up the live stream on the live stream. So Marthal says I was looking for more storage options. Are you trying to stick with like lithium NMC, or are you trying to get into lithium iron phosphate? Because that'll make a difference for sure. Toby says facing south and adjustable brackets for winter. So that's cool. Yeah, because I mean, I don't know where you're located, but I know here in Michigan, you have to, the variation in your angle is pretty extreme. So yeah, it looks like we're just fading into the distance with our live stream over and over again. That's not going to work. Sorry, guys. Marthal says, I cut down a tree, gained double the power. Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen with this because this tree is probably 50 feet tall and 20 plus feet into my yard. So it should open up quite a bit of the sky for me, which is a good thing. I'm pretty happy about it. Storing heat to storing air pressure. So you're not even just talking about electricity, you're just talking about anything, any kind of electricity or, well, not electricity, any energy in general. I think David Paz did some pretty good videos on the like solar heating with solar panels. He did like a comparison between a solar water heater and solar panels with a heating element. And in the wintertime, you can keep your house warm with it, or He called it a big battery pretty much, which is true. I mean, the BTUs are stored in this big tank of water. So I'm in the UK, Toby says. About to pull the trigger on some Eve 304 amp hour cells. So that's cool. Um, I think it was the 280 amp hour. What brand was it? It wasn't Lyshon. Might have been Eve. The 280 amp hour ones. I almost bought some of those a while back and did an expansion on my setup for I think I want to say they were like 88 or $89 a cell. That was right before it blew up to like $120 a cell. I didn't end up pulling the trigger, kind of kicking myself, but I mean, it's kind of a sickness. I have a bunch of cells sitting around right now that I haven't done anything with. I'm sure you guys can understand. Hydrogen is where I would like to go. Hydrogen, huh? How would that work? Kind of curious about that. Off-Grid Wannabe says, we never have enough panels or storage when winter comes here in Canada. I believe that. I don't know, where are you at in Canada? Because, I mean, Windsor's pretty close, but yeah, I'm sure up in northern Canada or even like Saskatoon and stuff like that, it's pretty much impossible, I would guess, to run just purely off solar power. Marthal says, any dump load, yeah. Watch all of David Paz. That's cool. Yeah, he does good stuff. Uh, he does a pretty wide variety too. It's nice. I like that. Toby, your gas price is going up. Yeah, well, oh, I see. Gas prices are going up everywhere. A forum I'm on, I was talking to a friend about that, and they posted a thread about gas prices, and I think it was like a year and 9 months ago. I posted on there, gas was $1.19 a gallon here, and it's now $3.19 a gallon. So yeah, that's enjoyable. Hydrogen fuel cell, okay, I see. Hydrogen home. So I'm assuming that would basically power a generator. Sebastian says, here in northern Alberta, Canada, no way I can do a solar panel. Yeah, I believe that. Summertime probably, gets decent sunshine. I would imagine it's probably similar to Alaska where they have almost 24/7 uh, sunshine during the summer just because of the solstice. But yeah, in the wintertime, even here, like I'm in Michigan and I'm below the 45th parallel, and it's a struggle. A friend of mine has he actually has 12 panels like mine on his garage and with just a wide open sky all day long. And he wired that into a 10 circuit, well, it's for a generator, but it's a transfer switch. And he wired all that in, so he's got 10 circuits in his house that run on solar. And he's struggling right now. He was like in the summer, he actually kept his house cool with air conditioning, and it was like 70 degrees in his house, and he had no problems. Battery was full every day, plenty of sunshine. He's starting to have a little bit more trouble now. He's trying to figure out ways to make the house itself more efficient as far as, retaining heat, insulating and stuff like that, paying attention to windows, what he can do to insulate them better and stuff. Because he's really close to having his house completely off grid just with 3,000 watts in solar panels. So it's pretty cool. It was exciting seeing him set all that up. Marthal says thinking about buying old hydrogen car and hack it. Off Grid Wannabe says Ontario. Yes, we get lots of snow. Yeah, I believe it. You lost supply lines in Canada with that storm. Hmm. Toby says over $1.50 a liter now. over $6 a gallon, right? Quick math in my head. That's brutal. Hopefully you don't have to commute very far. Marthal says Mike Lazinski powers his entire home from solar. From the Sumer? Sumor? I don't know what that is. Sorry. Uh, Off-Grid Wannabe says hydrogen is doable if you build an electrolysis machine. Not too hard. Lots of videos on it. There was a guy I used to work with that he said he did hydrogen injection in his car. I never really investigated it all, but I mean, really, all you're trying to do is separate oxygen from the hydrogen in water, right? It's the general concept, I would guess. I never understood why that didn't take off. They were saying something about the fuel cell's dangerous because there's uh, a lot of flammable stuff in it, but every single car on the road right now has flammable stuff in it. But apparently, hydrogen's not okay, but gasoline is. Pronoia says hydrogen tape sounds promising. 2-bit Da Vinci channel put me onto. I'm gonna have to look into that. The hydrogen thing sounds kind of fascinating. Marthal says, yes, Toby, I heard your supply was being cut. Yeah. You're in the UK, so Sebastian says, building an exterior wood burner with a mass of 5 tons. How are you moving it? You have like an excavator or something, backhoe, something to move it around? That's pretty cool. I'd like a wood burner in my house. I have a gas burning fireplace right now, but I'm literally watching dollar bills go up the chimney. So I'd like something more efficient, but the chimney that I have now is too short. So I have a 2-story house and the roof line's up here and the chimney only goes to here. So you get weird draft issues where it starts like sucking the air to the highest point in the house when you light a fire. So I can't really install a wood burning stove or have a wood burning fireplace unless you go through a lot of hassle to rebuild pretty much the entire chimney to bring it up over that upstairs roof line. So that way the draft wants to rise up out of the chimney rather than into your house. So that sucks because I'd like to have a wood burning stove. It's nice to know you have a heating source. Marthal says hydrogen tape is perfect, but the USA denied it. I don't know what hydrogen tape is. I'm ignorant to this. You guys will have to inform me. Toby says, what do you do regarding earthing your system? Yes. So it looks like Marthal pretty much hit it. You can go to like any kind of like a Home Depot, Lowe's, home improvement store, and most of the time in the electrical section they'll have grounding rods. They're like 8 feet long, and you can get grounding cable. You can get either insulated or uninsulated. I think 6 gauge, number 6, is usually what they have. That's what they use for houses. And you basically just drive that rod down into the ground, and then you clamp clamp onto a, clamp onto it with your grounding lead, and it's tempting if you have like my area. I have a lot of clay, so it makes it really difficult to work with. But make sure you drive the entire 8 feet down because the idea behind that is if you only go like a foot or two and then you're like whatever, that's good enough. The ground there might not be enough moisture in the ground to be electrically conductive. So you can run into issues where, yeah, you have a grounding rod 2 feet into the ground, but it's not actually somewhere for the electricity to go. It's not going to choose that as the path of least resistance. So that 8 feet is so that way the likelihood of you hitting enough moisture for that to be electrically conductive is there. So don't cut corners on that because that'd be a bad day. Sebastian says doubling the exterior walls with 8 inches of aircrete. I'm assuming that's some kind of insulation, insulating foam, or like a fiberglass insulation. So Marthal says summer solar would, oh, okay, so he would convert that, use that energy for hydrogen stored in propane tanks. That sounds like an interesting little production line you might have going on there. Sebastian says best cheapest is recycling plastic to make diesel. If you have the equipment, if you can get the equipment reasonably priced for diesel, I know there's a lot of people that have diesel vehicles. I saw a documentary on it one time. This guy would go around to different um, like restaurants and things like that and ask, "Hey, you guys getting rid of any oil, any frying oil or anything?" And he would go through, process it, and convert that into a biodiesel, which is pretty cool. I found out diesel engines are more forgiving as far as the fuel you put in them than I realized. They take quite a bit of different fuels. Um, kind of handy. It depends on what your supply is. Yeah. Off-grid wannabe said called Brown's gas, HHO, or go full tilt and get pure hydrogen, but storage is the problem. Yeah. Well, I thought the fuel cells, because I know, man, it was a while ago now, but they wanted to make fuel cells for the cars, obviously, and have the refilling stations. Didn't they have like some kind of a like an intermediary material inside the fuel cell? Like it wasn't just a tank full of like liquid hydrogen or something. I thought they had something else in the cell. Um, I don't necessarily think it was to absorb the hydrogen, but maybe. I know like acetylene tanks have acetone in them, and then they have like a porous structure inside the tanks, and there's only acetylene in the very top of the tank. So like for your gas torches, cutting torches and stuff, there's only acetylene in the very top of the tank, and then it actually has to bleed out of the materials below it for the gas acetylene at the top. Marthal says I have run generator off charcoal. Was that like a wood gas kind of thing? I've seen that a few times. I've never investigated that, but it seems kind of interesting. Do a lot of hand motions. Toby says, I saw someone do it with 2 glass jars, and in the event of an accident, they both just break. You're not actually creating any amount of hydrogen at any one time for it to explode. Yeah, I mean, I would think that it can't, like maybe, I mean, obviously it's flammable, there might be a flame, but I can't imagine there's going to be so much hydrogen in that area that it's going to turn into a bomb. But I remember, I think that was one of the big reasons hydrogen fuel cells didn't take off is because everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, hydrogen, it's going to be a bomb," which I don't think so, but I'm no expert. Marthal says, also have made rocket stoves. I've seen people do it with bricks and stuff like that, which is kind of cool. I actually bought a Kelly kettle, which if you haven't seen one of those, they're kind of cool. So it's a base that you create a fire in. It's just a bowl with a hole in the side of it. Um, and then it's got the kettle on top and it's tapered. So as you build a fire on the inside and you sit the kettle on top, it creates like a rocket stove out of the base and kettle, and it'll heat up. I think the one I have is like a liter and a half or 2 liters of water. And once that fire gets going, I mean, it's hot like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and you have boiling water, which is kind of cool. So I can show you guys if you want to see it, but I doubt you care that much. Marthal says hydrogen tape, new way of storing hydrogen. I'll have to look into it. Sebastian says plastic gives 80% of its weight as diesel. Sounds like a lot. I wonder, I mean, I'm guessing like an oil probably gives off more than that, but it sounds like a lot considering it's not something you would expect to give off that much fuel. Well, this is a fun conversation. Marthal says you activate the hydrogen off the tape with a laser. Very, very safe to move around. That's kind of cool. So it basically gives it somewhere to adhere to, I'm assuming, or be contained to where it's not really a volatile thing until you hit it with that laser. Marthal says aircrete is concrete plus air. So I'm like porous, I'm assuming, like lots of air, space for air in there. Toby Phillips says I have a grounding rod. Do you use the same ground for the DC as the AC? So I'm not an expert on this, but I'm pretty sure all of your equipment can get grounded to the same grounding rod. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but your panels can run to a grounding rod, and then all of the chassis and your inverter, your charge controller, all of those grounds can run together to that grounding rod. Um, I've seen, I think for the most part, the solar panels is mostly for lightning strikes. I don't think they really like short out and start sending power into the bodies of the panels really. But I'm guessing it can happen, but I think it's mostly for lightning strikes. And then obviously for the chassis in case something shorts out to the body or you have some kind of a ground fault situation where it becomes energized, it's going to send that to ground rather than someone coming and touching it. Um, but I would think that the grounding rod could be used for the DC and AC side for both of them. I don't know why not. So Marthal says, last summer I had two solar systems. The one that was grounded had no problems. The one not grounded fried because it was not grounded. Interesting. So, yeah, that's really interesting because I know like Will Prowse has talked about, temporary setups and not grounding it and stuff, which I'm not saying it's good practice, but I've seen a few ungrounded systems that, I mean, they've been running for a while, no issues, but yeah, I wonder what happened. I've seen No, excuse me, guys. I've seen people have issues with grounded systems from lightning strikes before too, where it sent power and fried stuff in their electronics from a lightning strike, which is kind of crazy. They're here now. Nissan has hydrogen cars. They tested them by shooting them with high-powered rifles. I mean, that's one way to do it. Probably, I mean, yeah, that's interesting. Okay, shot them in the fuel tanks. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that would probably be, other than like crushing the fuel cell, that's probably one of the worst things you could do to it. I mean, it's definitely a durability test. Wood gas, that's cool. Marthal says wood gas. So wood gas will work with charcoal as well, because I thought it was like when you burn the wood itself before it becomes charcoal, because charcoal is just a low oxygen environment, right? That's interesting. Kind of cool to know. He says I have a Kelly kettle. 5.5 cups of water in 8 minutes. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like mine. Marthal says I use two ground rods and run in series. Two run in series. So do you run everything to the first grounding rod and then the second grounding rod runs from the first grounding rod by itself? If that makes sense. So you run everything to your first grounding rod and then your second is just connected to the second grounding rod. We have many lightning strikes. Yeah, we don't get very many around here. In the summer we get some pretty bad thunderstorms, but nothing crazy. He follows Will Prowse. Yeah, he's he's got it figured out for sure. Yes, on the grounding rods. Okay. Yeah, because I've heard um, you don't want not what you did, but like having two grounding rods where stuff runs to each one of them, and then there's no connection in between. So yeah, I could see how you're set up because the series grounding, it's not. There's no conflict there. Everything's going to run to either that one or it's like a backup. So that's kind of clever. I might end up doing that with mine. Off-grid wannabe says grounding depends on the type of inverter. Some have 60 volts on the case. Okay. Oh, it's like the ones where instead of having like just a hot in your neutral, it's like a half hot and half hot, just in the other way, the other direction. Seems, I mean, it works, I guess, but it seems sketchy. I ground all mine together, AC and DC, but my inverters allow it. Yeah. So I have measured my Sigeneer inverters, and I haven't had any issues, as far as any voltages on the case itself. And I did find that the, which I guess makes sense when you think about it, the grounding lug, like on the terminal block, and the ground on the chassis is electrically connected, um, which is actually, kind of weird now that I think about it, because you would think that, well, I guess they don't expect you to run a house off of it either. Oops. If there's any products you guys want me to check out, just let me know. I don't have any agenda for this at all, just kind of making conversation. I learned that trick from an electrician, Marthal says. Yeah, that's kind of clever. A little bit of a backup for you. Yeah, so earth ground and case ground like on a car, so a chassis ground. Yeah. Has anybody used any of these products before? This seems like a plug and play option. Uh, I was thinking about someone was kind of interested. They were kind of asking questions about a system for like backup power, and they didn't really want to go the DIY route. So I was looking at these just for the simplicity of a plug and play. That there's no spot welding, no bolting, no nothing crazy involved. You just plug in your Anderson connection, and you're up and running. It even comes with little eyelets for your inverter or whatever. New Life PO4 lithium iron phosphate. That's cool. 5.3 kilowatt hours. 16S. That's nice. It works well. A lot better than the 14S for Project Overkill. I mean, really, that's fine. It just doesn't. It gets down to like 2.8 volts on the bottom side, and on the top side, it'll go all the way up. But I think right now we've been kind of slowly creeping that top voltage up just to make sure that stuff doesn't go out of whack and have a cascading BMS MOSFET failure situation going on. But yeah, that's been Project Overkill's been working pretty much flawlessly. Uh, I don't want to say I'm surprised, but I kind of am. Marthal says I've seen people use Blue Eddies for the non-DIY. Yeah, those are one of the few systems that came out that really stood up to the torture testing and just the well really just the general requirements of what people want out of that kind that kind of a setup, you know. Plug and play, just hit a button, turn it on, and you don't have to worry about it. And they definitely incorporated the higher solar input, which people obviously want. Why wouldn't you? If you have the solar power available, the MPPT, I'm pretty sure those have the MPPT, so you can go with the higher voltage. You're not limited like this. Um, can only go with 12 volts, so you can't do any kind of series connection at all. And most, unless you get a 12 volt specific, like a Renogy or whatever for a 12 volt battery, um, you already exceed the input of this. I think the max on this is like 21 or 22 volts, so pretty limited. But one thing that's kind of cool about this is it has studs over here on the side for a positive and negative for a lead acid battery, because they marketed this with the capability of expanding it, with a deep cycle lead acid battery. And I mean, the problem with that is right now this thing's at 11.9 volts, and with a lead acid battery, you're already way down on your state of charge. Even at 11.9 volts, um, this thing's still almost full, but a lead acid battery is going to be struggling, and basically you end up completely discharging and damaging your lead acid batteries. But uh, that was a long way of getting to those studs are hot, and they said um, you can only connect lead acid batteries to it, but the charger for this is a 12.6 volt output, which is 4.2 times 3. So I'm thinking it's just a 3S battery in there. Um, and honestly, I thought about taking like some 2170s and spot welding them together. This was going to be a little Power Wheel battery, but doing a 3S and however many P and making connections for this. And obviously they're not going to tell me to do this, but purely to find out if it would work. I don't know why it wouldn't. Get them to the same state of charge, same voltage, and parallel it in there and see if it would expand my capacity by whatever that size battery was. So I haven't done it yet, mostly because I've had no problems with this, and I guess that's more rare than I realized. But maybe one day I'll throw something like that together and just see what kind of reaction I get out of it. Toby says the knee active balancer is in my AliExpress basket, ready for the Black Friday sales. So I just bought these not that long ago, and these are the QN BBM. Can you see that? Yeah, active cell balancers. Depending on your battery, you probably don't need them. I mean, I don't know what you have going on, but with the BYD batteries I have, because the capacities and everything are so out of whack, uh, I figured this would be worth getting because I get one cell that gets up to 3.6 volts. My charge controller stops, and the other cells might be at 3.34, 3.33. So they're not quite there. It's just that one cell that's less capacity and it's topping off, and the other ones are still down here. And if I could bleed this power down using this into the lower cells, I think it'd be worth trying out. Um, these claim up to 6 amps of balancing current, but that's dependent on the voltage difference. So if they're really close, I think it's kind of proportional. The bigger the difference, the more current you get out of this, and the closer they are, the more it kind of trickles into the lower cell, which kind of sucks. It'd be nice even if they just had like a little knob on here that you could adjust for, like, hey, try to balance it at a higher current, and you could manipulate that to be able to choose, I want these to balance out at that higher current all the time. Because I mean, well, I haven't hooked them up yet to know, but I have a feeling that might be the case. seen Jehu do that. He uses skateboard batteries for that purpose to extend his main pack. Yeah, I mean, I don't see. I mean, they're hard connected, so I don't see why it wouldn't work. Um, but I just haven't gotten around to doing it. Um, I know with the K-weld, it definitely makes the spot welding easier. I picked up some of this nickel strip for that Power Wheel battery that I did, and I have a lot left over, like a lot, um, and it's just begging for me to build a battery. These are specific for the 2170s or 21700s. The battery hookup pad for the Model 3 cells. Yeah, I picked this stuff up, the honeycomb or staggered design, I guess you would say, rather than just being square, like straight rows. This one's on angles to make better use of the space, so it's not so clunky. Good for e-bike batteries. It compacts them down. I think pretty much every single e-bike battery out there is structured on that angle like that to save space. Toby says, does it burn off the excess energy or transfer it to another cell? They look like resistors. No, so these, well, I mean, I hope they're not resistors. um, these are supposed to transfer it from another cell. So um, from what I understand, I think these are the actual modules that do the balancing, and then this PCB is just something they came up with to mount 8 of them for an 8S, because you can find these like a 1S module and it looks like this, and you just plug it in and you can do. So if you have an odd number, these come in. Gosh, they have the individual ones that aren't on a PCB board, and I think they have a 4 and an 8 that comes on the PCB like this. So what I ended up doing, I just hopped on Blender and made a simple box and something I could drop this in so that this front edge is protected and these wires aren't going to short out or anything on other stuff in the area. But these are supposed to move the excess energy from a high cell to a low cell. It's not supposed to burn it off as heat, which is one of the reasons I wanted to get these, especially with the wintertime, because yeah, it's a struggle for sure. Um, I just I don't have the extra power. Like even in the summer, I didn't really have extra power, but at the time I was running like my Antminer, so that was like 1,000 watts, and I was able to run that for 12, 14, 16 hours a day. So I was definitely getting a lot more power in the summer than I am now. I'm only getting a few kilowatt hours. Marthel says they make both kinds. Some use resistors, other use capacitors to move the energy around, right? Yeah, so most of the I have like a million different things and within arm's reach. Um, Most of these, like the Dolly BMSs and the BMSs that I like, the Ant BMSs that I used on Project Overkill, um, these say with balance, but they do it with resistors, like what he's saying. So it's going to bleed it off as heat. Um, Whereas those active balancers are supposed to move it, which is obviously more efficient. If your cells are fairly well balanced and the capacities are pretty close, this is probably the better option because that's way more expensive. You can buy this BMS. This is the 4S, but 100 amp BMS for $50, and each one of these modules is 180, probably more now. I picked these up from you was it Utah? Like a EV company in Utah. I'll have to look up the link if you want it. Send me an email or something, or leave it down in the comment section. I'll have to get it to you. But yeah, Google search it, QNBBM balancers. They were one of the only ones in America that had it like in stock to order, because I could have gotten it cheaper on AliExpress, but I was impatient. uh, Off-grid wannabe says 847 high carbon paste for connections may help a little. Dallies are working out great for me. Marthal says, yeah, I've used Well, I used a Daily on that Power Wheel battery, never had a problem with that. Um, I actually put a Dolly BMS on a battery that I built for a scissor lift at work. It was a 24 volt battery. That's actually what I bought a bunch of it wasn't the Navitas cells that I did the video on. It was the top band ones they got in after that. But I bought a bunch of those. I ended up doing a 8S 8P battery for a scissor lift and cut the bus bars out of aluminum and used I want to say it was like a 200 amp Dali BMS for that. And so far I've had zero issues with it. It's up and running. And that had a built-in 24 volt charger on the scissor lift, so you just plug it into the wall, and I haven't had any problems with it. The charger actually cuts off just below at like 3.4 volts per cell, and for something like that, there's no need for an active balancer. Like the passive balancing on the BMS is fine. Number one, because the cells are all fairly close in capacity, so you're not going to see a whole lot of additional capacity from the uh, active balancer, but also because I'm plugging it into the wall at work, um, you're not really worried about efficiency that much. I mean, if you burn a couple extra watt hours to, as those balance out, and then you bump them up that last little bit, it doesn't make as much of a difference. Um, but for solar setups and everything, it might make a difference. For me, the cost was worth the additional capacity. Well, I hope it was. I know a lot of people have had those and they've had really good luck with them. So fingers crossed that mine work out. A lot of people have been happy with them though. There was I think it was a DIY battery is the Facebook group that a guy did that with. He went all out. He did the Batrium BMS, these active cell balancers, went through, he had relays on it for contactors and everything. And he increased his capacity because he used the BYD batteries also, and they were out of balance, and he didn't know, what other option was there other than the active balancing or just living with them being out of balance. And yeah, he had really good luck with them. So definitely increased his capacity, and it was worth it. Off Grid Wannabe says, all mine are active balancers, including the BMS. Really? Which BMS do you have? Because that's interesting. Most of I mean, I've been looking more on the cheap side. I haven't been trying to build out a super expensive BMS because I know they're out there. But most of the BMSs I run into are passive, so I'm kind of curious to see what BMS uses active balancing. Off Grid Wannabe says, very little capacity over 3.45, not worth chasing. That's true. And I thought about that, but for my batteries, when they hit like 3.3 volts per cell, I know like the typical charge curve is like they're getting there, kind of close. Anything over 3.45, like you said, there's only a teeny little bit of capacity. But I was surprised at how much energy went into my cells from like 3.35 to 3.4. After about 3.4, 3.45, it starts rising pretty quickly. Um, but there was quite a bit of capacity left from that like 3.3 to 3.45 in mine. Um, that made it worth it because I'll have one cell hit that 3.65 and the other ones are still down in that 3.3-ish area. So it might it might work out, it might not, but it's worth trying. Off Grid Wannabe says Ant 300 amp. So the Ant BMS has an active balancer, or you added an active balancer to it? Because that's interesting. The Ant BMSs that I have were all uh, resistive. They were all passive balancing with the resistors, so that's kind of interesting. I did the math on these, and the convenience is expensive. That's a pretty good size charger. 12 amps. Off-grid wannabe says yes, I have same problem with bad cells. It sucks. That's part of the risk you run with used used stuff. The BYDs especially. I mean, they were rode hard and put away wet for sure, and I mean, they're still trucking, but definitely degraded. Um, which it's nice seeing some products now come out that are easier to make those more degraded cells useful. It's kind of cool, but I bought a bunch of these. Well, I don't know if it was these specifically, but the ones I ended up using for my Meshtastic, my little radios here. I bought a bunch of these, like 100 of them, thinking I was going to build a uh, e-bike battery. I was like, individual BMSs might be really convenient. And then once I started getting into messing with all these wires, um, it's doable, but it would really only be like an emergency pack, and it would be big because you wouldn't be able to draw very much power from it. But I ended up abandoning that. But yeah, I have a bunch of those impulse buy. I've mostly stuck with the lithium iron phosphate. I haven't done very much with lithium ion. I know those are lithium ion, but as far as storage, like large scale storage inside my house and everything, I've tried to stick with lithium iron phosphate for the safety factor. But I'm kind of curious to see some of these. This is a 36-volt battery here, and I know they get the connectors, all the parallel and series connections down here at the bottom for all of these. I'm curious if anybody's ever messed with those, because those are scary. Those are like the headways. There's a lot of power ready to go in those headways. The bolt cells I have are heaven. You gotta love it when a plan comes together. They were brand new. Well, that helps. Have any of you guys found yourself falling into other hobbies because of your love of batteries, or just stuff that kind of skirts right next to it? Um, like I started getting into 3D printing and 3D modeling, and everything I have needs a bigger battery because I know I can. Toby says it's worth getting the cells new if you're going to all that effort. I'd say yes. Yes, in hindsight, I would not have bought those BYDs. Um, at the time, battery hookup was not getting the prismatic cells like they are now that are new or very close to new. Um, Man, they're all over the place now. You can get them from them almost any time. Like they had, and these are lithium titanate, but they had, gosh, what was it? I think 50 amp hour, 120 amp hour, and 130 amp hour. Like were they Lycian cells, I believe. I almost did a video on it just to give a shout out to let people know they were on the site. And by the time it was like the next day, I went and looked, and like two of them were the 50 amp hour and 120 were already gone. And like later that night, the 135s were gone also. So never mind. Um, but yeah, in hindsight, would not have bought the BYDs. I would buy the prismatics, or even these, the the 4 packs of their 100 amp hour modules. I mean, it's already got the terminal connectors. It's already got the heat shrink on here. Um, it's an individual cell, so connecting your BMS would be as easy as just hooking onto these terminals. I mean, this is as long as the workmanship inside the heat shrink is good, which I would guess it is, um, this isn't a bad option, really. I mean, $220 for a 100 amp hour 12-volt battery that's lithium iron phosphate, and it's going to last several thousand uh, charge cycles is not bad. I mean, it's no Battleborn. I understand that Battleborns have been battle tested and just absolutely tortured, and they still work. But these are a great option for a stationary setup. I like that the nickel strip they use has the hole, uh, the slot right here to help that current travel through the cell, because from my Milwaukee battery repair attempt, hey, that's still working, by the way. Uh, the attempt that I did with that, it made a very, very large difference on the weld quality of the cells when you have that slot in between, because it really forces that electricity through your cell and actually causes that little weld nugget uh, between the nickel strip and the cell. Spot welding. It's crazy stuff. Your car is held together with spot welds. It's literally sheet metal and spot welds. It's kind of crazy. Uh, I do my career, I do weld inspection and non-destructive testing, and I've done a few vehicle teardowns for Chrysler and Fiat and stuff like that. And your car is literally sheet metal held together by about 5,000 welds. It's crazy. What's crazier is there's a number of them that are allowed to be bad. Crumple zone. Marthal says, one of my bolts has 5.96 kilowatt hours. Those are lithium uh, lithium manganese though, right? The NMC, they're not lithium iron phosphate, right? Marthal says have 3D printer. Yeah, they're fun. I pretty much stick with PLA for right now, but I've done PETG filament in the past, and it was fine. I didn't have any major issues. That first layer is definitely harder to get to stick. I had to slow my travel speed way down, and that helped. And then after that, it was very similar to PLA, a lot more temperature stable and way less brittle. So most of the stuff I do, I need the tensile strength, or not tensile strength, but just the strength in general. I'm not really worried about being brittle. I'm not, shaking stuff around, smacking it against stuff, or anything like that. So the PLA is usually my go-to. Run hydroponics off solar. I I skirted that hobby. I started looking into like aquaponics and hydroponics and stuff for like lettuce and just like garden vegetables and stuff. And I could tell I was falling into that rabbit hole on YouTube, and I had to stop because I already knew I was going to have like a setup in my basement running off solar. I ended up getting a reef tank in the aquarium one time because of that. Toby says, yeah, I bought 3D printers purely to hold 18650s on a DIN rail. Uh, that's funny. I like that. Sometimes when you have the need. Uh, I I didn't even have a reason, actually. I just got one, uh, picked one up, and had some projects that I was going to do at work and stuff. Actually, the one I have was a work uh, 3D printer, and we made a couple of things like a funnel and stuff like that. And Yeah, now it builds GoPro holders for Picatinny rails and 18650 cell holders and boxes and whatever else I come up with for my battery adventures. Off-Grid Wannabe says, when they can sell me lithium for under $50 a kilowatt hour, I will stick with used cells. Yeah, I know right now battery hookups been getting. I've seen a few deals that they've had that were under $100 a kilowatt hour for reasonably easy to assemble stuff. Um, Most of the stuff now, like what's this thing I have up right now. So this is their 100 amp hour setup. I wonder if this will give you 950 for a 12. It sounds like Battleborn. I don't know what the price is per kilowatt hour for this, but I mean the prices have definitely come down. It's hard. Like the prices have definitely come down enough that if you're going to do like a small-ish project, getting new cells isn't bad, especially the stuff coming out of China with like the Lishan and Eve cells. Um, I've heard they're fairly reliable. People haven't had very many issues. Some people have had issues I've seen, but some people have been doing okay with them. But they've been driving the price down, and then obviously the used market, um, like these cells, they're new. They're new cylindrical cells, and they're rated. Well, I guess these particular ones. What would these be rated? There's 20 cells, 5 amp hours, 5,000 milliamp hours a piece, and I don't think that's a bad price. I mean, four of these for 220 bucks. I don't think that's bad. I mean, this is the inside. It looks like they took the time. I was about to start pointing at the screen. uh, they took the time on this with the zip ties. They got all the cabling. It looks like it's good quality silicone uh, insulated cable. These connections and everything look really nice. Yeah, if you want something, if you don't want to deal with spot welding or dealing with compression, because these are cylindrical, you don't have to deal with compression. Um, I think these are a good option, but that's just me. Sometimes the ease of use and assembly is worth a little bit extra money. So if it's for the hobby, by all means, build your own battery. Off-Grid Wannabe says, I still put 20 kilowatt hours a day through my Life PO Ford bus batteries. 20 kilowatt hours a day? Yeah, that's a lot. That's that's not bad. Marthal says, I am on the same page. The price of lithium is coming down, and Tesla's new cell will change the world. Are you talking about what are they, 4880s or whatever they are, like the pop cans? Um, yeah, I've heard that that particular cell, like basically what, again, not an expert, I've heard that the bigger the diameter and basically the more mass it has, the more difficult it is to manufacture because of the cleanliness requirements. You can't have contaminants in there causing shorting issues. And the bigger you make it, the harder it is to not have stuff included on the inside of these causing shorts. So I've heard they've had some manufacturing challenges with that 40. What size is it? I'm just going to type that in and see what it says. 4680. Close. New structural battery with 4680 cells in Gigafactory Berlin tour. So this was October 10th. Yeah, that'll be impressive. They've definitely Tesla. I would say has single-handedly pushed battery technology forward uh, in leaps and bounds because pretty much every other company is vehicle company anyway is kind of just following suit, and Tesla figured out a way for the battery storage for a car, with their power walls, which expensive, but again, ease of use off the charts. um, this is energy storage, right? So just because it's a car, it doesn't matter. I mean, this is going to apply, I think, in every aspect of our lives as far as energy goes, because energy is getting harder and harder to find. So that's my big push for trying to be as green as possible, because I think it's going to be we're going to see some interesting stuff with energy in the future. Looks like. Can you say hi? Say hi. Not feeling it? All right. Guess she's not feeling social. Marthal says I just got PETG. Yeah, that's as far as the printing goes. I know it's hotter. The hot end, you need to have a higher temperature, and I think you usually want, I don't know what kind of bed adhesion you're using. I've just been using a glue stick, which, eh, but I found that slow print speeds on your first layer really helps, slow that down. And once you have that first layer uh, stuck and good to go, and maybe your second layer, you kind of keep an eye on it. After that, it's fine. It's not bad. Um, PETG does absorb moisture out of the air, so if you aren't using it or you plan on storing it for a while, try and put it in a sealed container, because what'll happen is it'll absorb that moisture, and then when you go to use it in the future, it'll bubble, and you'll end up with like this porous goop coming out of the end of your 3D printer, and you just won't get good good prints out of it. I'm getting very distracted. Yeah, 4680s. So they're like a pop can. A lot big, 46 millimeters in diameter, I'm assuming, and 80 millimeters tall. That's big. Inspired by the aerospace innovation of building airplane wings as fuel tanks instead of building the fuel tanks inside the wings. Yeah. Tesla decided to build a battery pack that acts as a body structure. Oh, they gotta. I mean, it makes sense from an engineering standpoint. Like, kind of what they do with windshields. They know it's going to be there. It has to be there. And I mean, most cars today, they they factor in the strength of a windshield into all of the testing because it's a structural part of the car. Um, so it makes sense to do that with an EV, especially when you're trying to squeeze every last mile you can out of the range. Everything matters with an electric vehicle. The place I'm working right now is they have a Tesla Model 3 inside that they're doing whatever they're doing, and the aerodynamics that go into that car are impressive. I know Teslas are some of the most aerodynamic vehicles on the road, but just seeing the little things they do to just squeeze every last bit of efficiency out of the body. Again, it makes sense for an electric car. They don't have any room to spare. It's not, you're not giving up a tenth of a mile per gallon. You're giving up range, and everyone's fighting for this